היי לנה. היא כתבה שם, אם צריך, אז היא כתבה שם מה הקוד.
אני רואה שאנחנו היחידים שהגענו.
כתבה, הנה שלמה, רגע. שלמה.
אתה שומע אותי?
כן, אני שומע, אני בטלפון עם אילנה. אילנה, יש שם קוד, יש שם, איפה ששלחתי לכם בקבוצה, תסתכלי, אני אשלח לך, את יודעת מה, אני אשלח לך לבד. את רואה? יש שם קוד. כן, כן, בדיוק. יופי, ביי.
אבל אני מבין שרק אנחנו, לא?
כן, זה מספיק, לא?
מה שלומך?
הנה, רגינה גם, רגינה, אני בסדר. הנה, רגינה גם מצטרפת.
רגינה שלום.
אנחנו נהיה... היי.
שלום, שלום, מה נשמע?
בסדר? אנחנו צוחקים שאנחנו הראשונים.
תגיד, צריך לעבור לאנגלית?
מתישהו כן, כפי
לא,
נראה.
עכשיו.
עכשיו לא.
איי.
למרות שאנחנו, אני רואה אנחנו מוקלטים כבר? כן, אנחנו כבר מוקלטים. זה בסדר. שישברו את הראש.
שיתרגמו לבד.
כן, זהו. אבל רגינה, אין לה, בסדר. אנחנו נגיד לך בעברית.
לא רגינה, מה עם הדוקטורט? נגמר?
לא, אני הקיץ מגישה, אתם רואים, אני באוניברסיטה, לא הלכתי הביתה.
הנה אנה. היי אנה.
Hi, hi,
Hi.
so nice to see you. Hi, Schlomo and Amnong.
Hi.
And
Regina.
Regina.
I'm Regina.
Regina.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Very good to see you all. How are you doing?
Tricky question.
Very concerned.
Concerned?
Yeah.
Yeah, about the political...
About our future.
Yes, a very bad kind of situation. Right. Mm-hmm.
We are really frightened.
Yeah, well, I hope Israel is tough enough to go through this also.
I hope to. I hope to. I hope to.
Yeah. Right. I'm in communication with my nephew who lives in Rehovot and some other friends, and it's really not nice. Bad.
Yeah. Do you see the news from Israel?
Yeah, we do see Israeli news. I get from New York Times also, but I also am subscribing to a Haaretz newspaper and also another kind of like daily, it's not really newspaper, but it became from a journal, something now that it's online daily called Jewish Currents. I don't know if you know about that. It's a kind of secular Jewish publication, and it has a more cultural orientation, but it gives the news about the pretty much from the democratic point of view, from the humanistic point of view. So I get it. Yeah.
More left-wing position.
Yes, kind of a, I wouldn't call it really left-wing, I would call them humanist cultural point of view.
Liberal point of view.
Liberal humanist cultural, but it doesn't always agree with the left politically, but it leans to that part, yes.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
Except this, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I finished all my travels last year. I was the first travel was to Israel on my Fulbright.
Fulbright, yeah.
And then after I finished that in 2 months of my stay, partially coming to Beersheba to that very night. I will never forget that seminar, really. And then I was for 2 months in Serbia, in Belgrade. That's where I'm from originally, in September and in October last year. And then I went to Norway this spring, a similar time when I was in Israel last year. I was in a very interesting institution of research in early childhood education. So they are both teaching early childhood educator teachers, actually more researchers. It's a graduate school, yes.
Where in Oslo?
No, it's Bergen. It's
Ah,
called
Bergen.
Bergen.
Mhm.
I like the
Harry
fish
Smith
market
is
in Bergen.
Harry Smith is in Bergen.
Oh, I don't know that. Look, hi, Lana. She's still coming
Lana is
on.
getting, yeah.
Oh, that was a mistake. Oh, okay. We have a friend from Canada, originally also from Yugoslavia. Hi, Dragana.
Hi, Anna. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dragana. Hi,
How are you?
coming to you.
I'm
Nice.
good.
I think we met once in one Zoom.
Where?
I don't know where you met. maybe on a
one of your Zoom, I think.
maybe.
Oh,
Probably.
maybe, yes.
Hi, Dina. How are you?
Hi.
Dina from Africa, but originally from Moscow also. How are you doing?
Very well. Yeah, I'm a bit tired.
You're the Soviet Union group.
Oh, no, she's a completely her own very unusual path and very self-made person.
Shlomo know to speak Russian. Or he's Russian speaking.
Shlomo?
Shlomo, yeah.
Nice, very nice. So shall we wait another 2 or 3 minutes for more people to come and then
Okay.
we'll start. I don't know whether you all saw the email from Eugene. He
Yeah.
Mhm.
he might, it depends on, but he's on vacation, so it depends on what they are doing in their vacation at Cape Cod, which is north from here near Boston.
Yeah, well, nice place.
Very nice place, yes.
Cape Cod is a Kennedy area.
Yeah, kind of like a lot of East Coast politicians have houses or summer houses around there. Hi, Ilana. Have a chance to talk who very soon. And this is
We have two Ilanas.
Ilana. Hi,
Ilana Margolin and Ilana Dror.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Ilana.
Right. Okay, a couple more minutes and we'll start.
Yeah.
There was another guy that Eugene cited from his critical.
Yeah. Professor Bob Hampel, he is now emeritus, but he's from Eugene's department at the University of Delaware. And he also could not come, but he sent his remark that Eugene
Send
cited.
us.
Yeah. We can share Eugene's thought later on. I put it on a Google Doc. I can give you an address to that, and I can share on the screen later.
How many participants usually in your meetings?
Very unpredictable. Sometimes 2 or 3, sometimes up to 10, maybe. Hi, Abram. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Where is Abram from?
Abram is from New York, originally from Australia. But where are you now, Abram?
Yeah, I'm in New York right now. I live in Brooklyn. I have a background in philosophy of education. I read some Bakhtin. I encountered Eugene and Anna through that channel. And I also had, while I was doing my philosophy of education, master's degree at Teachers College. I was kind of studying self-directed learning environments. So I was volunteering in an Agile Learning Center, which has its own kind of theorizing around natural inclinations of children towards their own independent learning. So I'm really interested in this one.
Yeah. I guess we started with Avram presenting himself. So I will just ask you, Avram, then to ask another person. You're the first one who actually presented himself like that. Ask who else, and so pass the baton to another person when you finish with who you are. So Avram, who are you choosing?
Regina. Hi, Regina. Nice to meet you.
Hi,
Tell us about
nice to
yourself.
meet you. Right. So I'm Regina. I'm coming from K Academic College, and I'm currently doing supposed to submit my dissertation this summer on the topic of the motivation of students with learning disorders to become teachers. And I'm practicing Heutagogy in my classes.
Very nice. Thank you. Regina, pick somebody else to represent themselves.
And Dragana.
Hi, I'm Dragana Martinovic. I'm from Canada, Ontario. I'm a mathematics educator. Last year I retired, so I'm Professor Emerita and very interested in your discussion.
And pick
And
someone.
next person, Ilana.
Which one?
Which one?
Oh, Dror.
Margolin.
Dror.
Margolin.
Dror. She said that.
Sorry. I'm from Beit Berel College, teacher college in Israel, and practice Heutagogy in my courses.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Ilana. Dror. Pick somebody else.
Dina.
Yeah. So I am from Russia, now living in Uganda. I have a background in democratic schools, which we organized in Moscow. But then now I'm involved in a project here. It's a learning center for teenage kids who are kind of out of place everywhere, like difficult backgrounds, difficult lives. So it's a non-profit, yeah. I think.
Yeah, non-profit.
Anyway, so I work with teenagers, and it is different but also similar because we are trying to bring the joy of learning into their lives, which were obviously completely it was stripped kind of from them. So yeah, among other things. And I only read the whole email chain yesterday and realized what the topic was, what the book was, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna join definitely, but I barely read anything. So
That's fine. You're becoming a good student.
yes, absolutely.
So who are you picking to present themselves?
Well, Ilana, the other one.
Margolin.
I am a retired professor from Levinsky College of Education, and now I'm a member in an epistemic community of teacher educators who study the subject of Heutagogy. We experience it, we learn it, we test it, and it's very interesting.
Okay, great. Ilana, who will you pick to present themselves?
Amnon?
Amnong. Okay. I also retired professor from K College of Education. I don't know, emeritus we are or retired. What is the term? Okay. Nevertheless, Schlomo and me were busy with Heutagogy for long years. And we, of course, try it by ourselves. We think about it, we write about it. We wrote about it, also this book, of course. And we believe in it. That's it. Shlomo.
Sure. So I'm Schlomo and also retired from Kate College of Education. With Heutagogy, we are engaged about almost 10 years now, trying to theorize it and practicing it. Wrote a book, couple of papers, and trying to find followers.
Thank you, Shlomo. Thank you, everyone. We didn't hear from
Chayuta. Chayuta is, her name is Chayuta. It's in Hebrew now. Chayuta? Okay.
Maybe it's not right there at the moment.
It's also in our group of Ilana and Regina and Ilana.
Right. So it's a very rare, actually, that we have the authors in our book clubs, and that's a particular honor for us to have you and your views of the whole book and what you wanted to achieve. So I would, before I give you the word, I would just usually we go around and say our general thoughts, not any particulars, like a general impression, and then we can go into the particulars. And so I think maybe it would be very good to hear first different general impressions from people, and then give you the word to deepen that a little bit, and then we can discuss various details that people find interesting, themes and critiques. So who would like to kind of like give their general impression of the whole book? If you read the whole book. If you didn't, that's also fine, because you can then ask very good questions if you just read part of it or just the title or whatever. So I don't want to kind of put you on the spot, but you can just say in general what it means to you, or what questions do you have.
I can start if everyone else is shy.
Start it, please.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, the first thing I'll say is going to be a critique, because in the title, it only says Heutagogy, and unless you know what that means, you might not understand that you actually want to read it, which happened with me, because usually when I know I don't have a lot of time, I see the title and I'm like, okay, interested, not interested, whatever, I don't know, no. And so I saw Heutagogy and I was like, okay, don't know. And only like when I had a minute and I opened the actual book, I realized that I would be very interested to read it fully. Yeah. So then I read the preface, yeah. And yeah, it was very clear and everything was understandable what it's about and everything. And then I even managed to go as far to the definition of Heutagogy. Yeah. So there I am. I'm very interested to hear more about this book. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Who would like to be next? We have Matthias also coming. That's actually not Matthias, it's Silviana Barbata. So would you like to say anything, Dragana or Ilana 1 or Ilana 2, Regina, Abram?
Well, I can say something. Contrary to previous books, I didn't read this one. And first I was too busy, so I apologize for that, but I thought maybe that's a good opportunity for me to learn more also, and because the authors are here. So it's a bit different scenario. So I'm just looking forward to see how I will respond to what I'm hearing. I also read Eugene's email, so it was informative in many ways.
Very interesting. How about you, Regina?
One second. May I ask the first speaker, what is your impression or what questions you had while reading the book? If I'm not mistaken, you said that you're working in the context of students that have more or less challenges. Did you find it something suitable, or what questions do you have, or how do you see this? Is it feasible to implement it as part of your practice? This whole views of Heutagogy? I'm asking, I think it was Dina who spoke, right? Dina, it's for you. Okay.
Yeah, could you repeat? I'm sorry,
Yes,
it was a bit loud here.
You said that you read the book, and my question, I have two questions. The first one, what is your impression of the whole perspective? And the second one is, do you see it something that is feasible? Have you tried something? What is your takeaways from reading the book?
Well, I did not read the book, like I said.
Oh, you
Yeah, I only read the preface, yeah, and Eugene's email. And I just instantly got excited because it seems like such a close area to my interests. But I just didn't know the word Heutagogy, like never.
What excited you that you decided to devote the time and come tonight?
Well, it seems like it's a nice bridge between self-directed and progressive, like it's right there on the, like in between them. And that's very nice, because I think the more kind of diversity and the more there are of those kind of bridges between things, from like the actual enforced curriculums to complete freedom, the better it is for people like teachers to go bridge by bridge and experience different things. So it just sounds like a wonderful thing to try and experience.
And how about you, Regina? What excites you about the whole project?
Well, it aligns with my professional identity as an educator who sees a human being with his natural tendency to learn and to explore. And by the more the years that pass, you come to realize that grades and the curriculum, the restrictive curriculum and the restrictive roles of teachers in the classroom prevent students from exploring and following their own interests. And at the end of the day, they don't learn. They get marks. They go through a process, but they don't learn. I come from English, and I know that many people have a very negative experience with learning a language. And the negative experience comes from us forcing them how to learn, what to learn, and how to balance it. So allowing them to follow, and especially with a skill-based course, it's even easy, because I don't care what is it that you read. I don't care what is it that you write about. You have all the freedom that you like by me facilitating. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that excites me is the exchange of roles between a teacher and a student. It minimizes the hierarchy. It gives a lot of respect to students' voice, to students' place. It's more just. So that's where it takes me. Obviously, there are issues with assessment, especially in teachers training college. At the end of the day, unfortunately, we have to give numbers. God knows what they represent, but we do have. So finding ways how to allowing a meaningful learning experience led by students, and this idea of numbers, trying to bridge that, it's a challenge, but one that I'm happy to take.
Very interesting. How about you, Ilana? Now there is only one.
Can I add something as well?
Oh, sure.
It's kind of, for me also, why I'm very interested in, I got interested in Heutagogy, is because now that I'm working with unprivileged children, I realize that the principles of democratic education won't always work, because it's a very different set of things that people want and need here and have experienced. And so you need to adapt, you need to adjust. And the more you know of various possibilities of how to do that, the better in the end you will do. And the children will be therefore. So it's, yeah.
Thank you, Dina. And you, Ilana?
I am interested in the concept of learning and the role of the teacher, because the teacher becomes a tutor, not the one who knows everything and teaches his knowledge, but he is a trainer and can learn with the pupils, with the students, not give commands or instructions, but learn with and become a tutor and listen and talk to them and manage a discourse with them and trying to know what they really want, to learn and how to learn, and accompanies the students to do it. And it's a very big change in the concept of teaching. And it's not easy because all of us learned in a hierarchical system, and to change your mind and your role, it's a very difficult thing.
That would be very interesting to discuss. Yeah.
If I may to add to something to Ilana's words, us as teachers, educators, and teachers trainers, I do hope that by allowing them a different learning experience, they will translate their own experience into the classrooms, and then the change might begin. Because once I observe teachers, pre-service teachers, when I come to their lessons, and it's like a replication of, I don't know, 1948 when I was a student. Teacher-centered lessons, although they try all kinds of activities, but it's as if, because it's not an activity, it's a perception of, like Ilana said, the role of the teacher. And by allowing them to experience that and the benefits that they have, while it's difficult, but difficult is not a reason not to do something. So by allowing them to experience a meaningful learning experience, I hope that they will be able to deliver this or create an environment that their students will have a meaningful learning experience. And that's how this change might occur.
Regina, are you talking about you modeling to them the experience?
Yes, because you can't speak two languages. You cannot teach Heutagogy as a concept, as a content, and keep to your traditional methods. You have to show it. You have to practice what you preach. Otherwise, they won't believe you. So I try, not 100%. I'm still in the learning process. I don't think I will ever learn, because different students present different challenges, different content, and they always challenge me. But the idea of modeling and speaking the language with assessment, with all the aspects, that's what I'm referring to.
Very good. Abram.
Hi, thanks so much for writing this book, Amnong and Schlomo. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I got preoccupied with a couple other readings that I was reading. I was really interested in your theoretical framework around self-directed learning, because I'm starting to see that there's like a, what do you call it? A family of concepts that seem kind of related. And I'm just curious where and how these different conceptions of self-directed or self-determined learning kind of fit together, and what their overlaps are, what their differences are. So because I had limited time, I read less of the case studies. I didn't read the case studies, actually. I sort of jumped ahead because I was a little bit familiar with Eugene and Anna's kind of work and their background. So I was keen to see how you distinguished and made that those contrasts with their open syllabus kind of model. But in the end, the main questions I have are around what is, so the term that you've latched onto, Heutagogy, it's not just self-directed, it's the self. So there's a kind of the emphasis, which I think is kind of embedded in there. And I'm wondering how important you think it is that it's a kind of concretized self. And that raises a lot of questions for me in terms of like the dialogical, the relational aspect of learning. And so I read the chapter about where you talk about the Rogerian sort of background and theoretical grounds for your construction here. And I felt that even though I'm on board with so much of that as well, I still, because of this Bakhtinian reading and thinking about relations, I'm also like reading little bits of anthropology. I'm really concerned that we're kind of creating a kind of like, because I'm also interested in identifying what is self-directed learning. I feel like we end up having to start with a kind of concept of the self that's kind of individualized, separated from the relationships from other people, even as we try and like romanticize and throw back in the I-thou relation. It's the self that has the I-thou relation rather than that being constitutive. And so these are the kinds of concerns I have. So that's like my main thing is about what is the self. And then the other kinds of questions were things like, I find myself asking how important is the democratic education aspect of self-directed learning? Because I understand and recognize those as goods and goods for the self, but as it relates to the process of learning, like the psychological needs that are kind of tied into the authenticity or whatever of the learner becoming in that process of learning that is heutagogy, right? I'm not sure exactly where one's responsibility to others fits into that. And that comes back again, I think, to the problem of where are the relations and the relationships. And the two other things that I would love to hear about. One of them, I love this. There was just like a throwaway term, I think, in the discussion about the agreements and disagreements with Eugene and Anna's kind of model. And that was the term of like the smart robot era. And so I'm curious about how that impacts or affects like the word in your title, the subtitle is about zeitgeist. So why now the zeitgeist is moving towards self-directed learning, I feel, or heutagogy, but is it necessary for the good? Because I am worried, going back to the democratic problem, that the question that we should also be asking is like, what about the education of the tyrant? Because I can certainly see that one could do self-directed learning and not cultivate necessarily democratic ideals and be become that Foucaultian kind of entrepreneurial self. All right, that's a lot from my reading, but yeah, I'm really curious to get into your thinking about this and hear how you see it fitting.
I would, before letting Amnon and Shlomo answer this very interesting, really, question, give word to Silviana if she wants to say something about your general impression and your questions.
Yeah, my question is about the daily way of doing it, and how to proceed, and how to get their trust on this kind of method, and when they are not into it, how to deal with the not with students that are more interested in being taught more than participating in this kind of initiative. And another question I have too, when I read the examples, is about why did you go for a group learning? No, more why opting for the work in groups, and if the PBL, working with PBL, is makes it easier to to have this kind of methodology introduced into the classroom. So I think it's more, the questions are more methodological and about how to proceed in the daily way of doing it, and dealing with the students and their questions about if they are learning or not, what if they need more the professor's instructions and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia, and a little bit about my general approach too. So I also actually discussed with Eugene a lot of very super interesting issues. I think this is the community of educators that we belong to together, even if we have a little bit disagreement here or there, but we have a general approach that wants to change education to be really following the student and student center in general approach. So I found very, very interesting your putting in the continuum pedagogy, andragogy, and heutagogy, if that's the right way to pronounce it. And I like the distinct differences that pedagogy can be maybe equated with the conventional authoritarian kind of approach in education, and andragogy, which started as an adult education, could probably be more identified with the progressivist way of approaching education, and then heutagogy as kind of like moving even further than that to give the student much more freedom than andragogy did. I see what we are doing, and we can discuss that later, as not part of that continuum. I see it as an actually paradigmatic change, and that although we use a lot of similar words and similar motivations and concepts, I think there are several of the really paradigmatic differences, but I'll talk about them later, because your book so much instigated me to think very clearly about where and why I felt sometimes difference and sometimes a complete agreement. And so I think it's a very, very necessary that you wrote this book. So for me, that was very interesting, that continuum that you found there. Another thing for me was interesting to think about was your identifying different conceptual, epistemological, and philosophical approaches that kind of underpin, support or not support this whole approach. Because for me, they were always there, but you systematized it and you brought some names that I didn't know before, and kind of really pinpointed various exact concepts where somebody can be seen as bringing more meat to or support or a justification for this kind of orientation in education or learning. Also, what it made me think about is a difference between learning and education and whole idea. And you have a little bit of approach of Lev and Wenger, but they start with the idea that I subscribe to, that learning is unavoidable. We always learn, we cannot stop learning. We are the learning species, so to speak. The question is only what we learn. And so when, for instance, Regina, you said that, they don't learn, that means they don't learn what you notice as a teacher or appreciate as a teacher, that means there is something prescribed, even if it's not said, but the areas like if students would go for something completely different, that's off the radar for you as a professor of, let's say, English or something like that. So it doesn't come to you. So I think that us using the word learning in a decontextualized and general way is a trap, because I think learning is like breathing, and we have to say then what exactly somebody is learning, and then why is that important, or what's the level of that, and for whom is it important, and not just in general. So this is a little bit of my general kind of like a beginning of discussion, and I will now give you, Shlomo and Amnon, word to present what for you is the most important, what you thought, what were the problems that you had when you were writing the book. Not, first of all, problems in switching to Heutagogy as a teaching approach, and then also when you started writing a book, what you saw that what is important, what is not, how you decided to conceptualize it just like that. And I think it's written beautifully with a very nice and a language that's kind of like just leading you from one to another. Okay. So
It requires a change of paradigm about what's learning, doesn't it? It's like it requires a change in everything we believe it's learning until now, I think.
Yeah.
Schlomo.
Thank you for inviting us to this club. And let's do it in the Heutagogy way, which is going as it runs across the questions, and don't have any structured lecture or something arranged before. I want to begin with a personal note, which will clarify some of the issues raised here, some of the questions. I was the president of the college, and I retired about 14 years ago from the presidency, and continued teaching a couple of years. And then I realized that what I'm doing is very boring. Boring, first of all, for me, not for the students necessarily, because I'm doing more of the same. The lectures are different, the subjects are different, the students are different, but basically it's more of the same. And as I look at the educational system in Israel, I know better, but in other countries, in the States, I saw some schools, and in other countries, the schools usually don't fit the needs of the students of the 21st century. They still get lectures, writing notes, preparing for exams. And the day after the exam, they put the delete button in the mouth, in the brain, and that's it. They forget everything they learned, and they go on to the next test. Something was missing here. And what was missing here is that to learn is a hard work, but it's fun. We all know it because we are doing it. We learn, it's not an easy job, but at the end, we want it, we like it. Learning is something that burns inside us. And most of the students are not there. So I read many materials in order to find something else to do. And one of them was the pioneer article of Hayes Kenyon from Australia about Heutagogy. They coined the term, and they present the system. their method, the way of thinking. And I said to myself, let's try it. And in the book, there is some of the experiments we did. And then I put Amnong inside, took him inside and said, hey, you are in the way doing something very similar. Look at this one. So it's more experimental than something else. The aim was to change how I look, the students look at the learning process. And to one of the questions that was before, a very, very important thing is the idea of trust. It's one of the main corners of the system. You have to trust. You have to get trust from the students. And maybe I was privileged because before I was the president of college. So I could come to class, do whatever I want, and tell them, trust. I give you trust. You trust me that I know what I'm doing. Let's go together. Nobody's running after me to see what I'm doing. And it was a tough process because to get to the state that they believe what you say and you really mean it, this is the tough minute. This is the tough question. This is a manipulation. This is only that. This is only that. We don't know. Nobody else is teaching like that. We don't want it. It's a very hard job. You hear a lot of complaints at the beginning. And the beginning may be half a semester. But you know that it's take time. To change is not an easy process. And it's not a one-shot business. And even if there is 1 or 2 students in the class that go with you from the first minute, there are some students in the class that don't go with you till the end. Because they are regular to the teacher who said, you do, I say you do, point. So this is a tough question. And there was a very, very interesting question here about the self. And we didn't try, at least Amnong can correct me if he has another ideas, because we are divergent. We're 2 people and we have 2 different ideas about many things. I don't think that the self was something that we deal with. It was not something that was really on the table and we spoke about and we deal with it. Could have been one of the byproducts of the process, but it was not an aim of the process. I don't think that I know what is a self. I don't think that the students know what is the self, and I don't believe, and I'm not sure, that the self is here an important, let's say, concept. In a different book which I wrote, I analyzed this self-concept, and there's so many self-concepts and so many ideas about what is the self. At the end, everybody has his own, I'm speaking from philosophical point of view, everybody has his own self-concept of self. So we didn't try to ask the students, not at the beginning and not at the end, what is a self? What is your self? Even though one of my courses, which is in the book, is about who am I, but not in terms of self. Because I don't believe that definitions or something like that help us to be better teachers. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the point. The idea of self-determined learning or Heutagogy is that nobody else tell you who you are. Which means that I'm not the initiator of the learning process. I'm not the one who evaluated. I'm not the one who said, oh, that's what I want from the learning process for myself. That's all up to the student himself, herself. So on the other end, the idea of relationship is very important. And because in a way, the self is some sort of sum of the relationships you have. So the idea of relationship is very important. And the relationship is not only with your friends, with your classmates, so on, but the relationship with the content you learn, the relationship with other people outside of the realm of education, and what it brings to help you learn the questions you want to deal with. Because without relationship, you cannot do anything. Even if you read a book, you must have some relationship with what you're reading. So it's a very large concept and very important. And maybe a last thing that I want to point, and Amnon may elaborate this more because it's his hobby, about democracy. And you think that if you develop capacity to engage in what you like and you are democratic in a very, very basic term of not being obliged to any authority, of rejecting any authority which is not justified by your terms, have no rationale and so on. And this is a sign of one of the signs of democracy. It is very, doesn't capture all the things and also, but a basic term of the democracy does capture. So I think that's enough for a beginning statement.
Thank you, Shlomo. Do you want to continue, Amnon?
Schlomo talked about trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about another very central term or central concept or term in the book and the idea or the approach, the state of mind of Heutagogy, which is wandering, learning by wandering. I think Matusov also noted it. Learning by wandering, it's mean when I talk with my student and at the beginning of the year and try to explain them what we will do this year or this course. I invite them to join with me to a journey which we don't know what will be the ways, what will be. We just all the time we are just going by curiosity. We don't looking for some purpose, or we are just like going in the desert, for example, without any road. We just have an area, and then we find something. And when we find some ants, for example, and we're looking at the ants, we find what happens with the ants. We find some flowers, we find some way of geologic shapes, and all of this. We are just let our feet to lead us without any purpose, just with our intuition, just to, what is curious us, by exploring and by wondering. And I think this is the experience, with a different experience of learning. And I even suggest some of the students, I have an exercise of it too, and ask them to go a few miles from the places, from the house, and to let the feet take them, and then to tell us about their experience. And suddenly you find out that they found a lot of things, a lot of visions that they didn't notice before, a lot of backgrounds, a lot of details, and they get out from the gestalt, from their gestalt, in order to free themselves and to let themselves to experience an authentic learning. And I think this is also one of the main idea of Heutagogy, to let yourself lead yourself, to lead yourself, not leading by a purpose or by people or by teacher. We are just for them. We are a facilitator just when they wish to ask us or to advise us or to make a dialogue, we are there, but they lead the question. Of course, we have some limited, because we are in the university. I also teach Heutagogy in university, Ben-Gurion University, a lot of years. Different students from psychology, sociology, different subjects, and cognition and instruction. This is the name of the course. It's a one-year course, yearly course. At the beginning, like Schlomo, it's very difficult for them to understand the freedom, and they also reported that it was at the end of the year, it was very difficult for them to deal with the endless freedom. Where to start? What to think? What do you want? What do you want us to do? It's very, very embarrassed them. But slowly they understand, they experience the different experience, the different concept of learning, and they really, I think, 99%, if not more, usually 1%, they really ask me why we didn't learn it or learn this way from beginning, from grade 1, and from the they explain, and they share their feelings about their learning, the joy of their learning, the joy of their leading, what to learn. It's a process to decide what to learn about. Okay, sometimes it took them 1 month to decide what to learn, what is interested in. Nobody never asked them what you are interested in. Even it's in the subject, in a general subject like cognition. What is interested? Okay, well, you can connect, I told them everything. You connect everything with everything. You connect all your interest with cognition. But begin with the questions, what is interested? And how do I like to learn? How do I want to learn? What is my skills? What are my tendencies, dispositions? Okay, and let release it. Let go with your leading. I think it's also to find the self, to find what is interested me, to find how can I learn, from whom, from what, how to know it is what I want. I always ask them, also ask them to make some Regina, איך אומרים, formative assessment. Formative assessment, which mean self-formative assessment, which mean what my expectation for the process and for the knowledge I wish to get. And then this is maybe lead them as selves to look for or to look after their expectation, to look back. Sometimes I also tell them it doesn't matter if they learn not by their expectation, or exact expectation. Maybe they find something, and this is wondering. Maybe they start or begin with some content or some subject that interested them, and then by wondering, they found that there is different subject that they wish to develop, they wish to deep for deep learning, and it's okay. I can encourage them to change and to go by their intuition, and it's okay. They don't have. I also remind them that for me, deep learning is when they get out from more questions from the course from the learning that they come into this. I'm looking for questions. I don't want to close. It's not but I believe that we don't have to close things, to summarize things. We have to open things. And each questions or each answer open a lot of new questions. And this is a real authentic learning. And it's learning by wondering. It's all the time just coming more and more wide. And we call it, Schlomo found and said the term of mesh, learning by mesh. The knowledge that we are organizing our mind is like a mesh. Okay, each point are connected to all the others point in our neuron system. And what is learning except a new connection, new association? And I think this is the most important. About democracy, just one thing about democracy, which Schlomo and we argue with Eugene and Anna. I believe also, I don't know if we began this discussion with the situation in Israel democracy now. So I don't know if you are familiar with this, but we have a lot of problems, a lot of arguments now. And democracy, it's not the role of the majority. It's not just to come into what do you want to learn, and the majority decide that we want to learn something this or something else. It's not just the majority. We believe, I think we believe that to educate or to learn to be a citizen in democratic society, you need to be to lead yourself, not to be led by others. It means that you have motivations, you have curiosities, you have you develop your critical thinking and creative thinking, you know how to look or to observe your society, and to be involved with it, to want to change, to want to be involved with it, and I believe this is the most important thing in order to be a citizen in democracy societies. Not to let the other lead yourself, to know how, and also to find yourself in order to contribute to the society, to find what is interesting, what are you good at, or what do you want to do, really, not what others expect you to do. So this is also element of the self that important to develop in order to be a citizen of democracy societies. So I believe Heutagogy have a lot of potential to be a frame for learning how to be a citizen in democracy, or contributed citizen in a democracy societies. I think this is for now.
Okay, so now I feel yeah, a little bit called to talk about the democracy and what it means yeah, for me, and potentially for Eugene too. We did not come to the democracy in a straight way, or we do not teach for democracy. In fact, I think that there is a larger question here that we try to teach not for what we think is important, but for what the student thinks it's important, so that they define. And for some people, democracy means nothing. They like butterflies, or they like to play piano, and they don't concern themselves with the political issues at all, even in the times of upheaval. And so what we do, we create a possibility for multiple different approaches that may not have been very clear in our 2017 paper with that you are in dialogue with. And I reread it this morning and found that I would rewrite it now. It's a long time ago and our process was developing. So let me start from different point of view. We started from a dialogic pedagogy inspired by Mikhail Bakhtin. One of the things that I really deeply agree with Bakhtin is that a dialogue, genuine dialogue, is a meeting or encounter between consciousnesses of equal rights. That means everybody is unique, but the rights are unique. And so in that sense, there is nobody should have the last word. Nobody should be the expert. Nobody should shut everyone down and say, I know and you don't know. But that everybody's input in a dialogue should be taken seriously and answered honestly. So whether it's a student or it's a so-called teacher, on that level of consciousnesses with equal rights, we came to the conclusion that, and through our practice, that in order to create a genuine dialogue, and I think you would agree with that, you really need an atmosphere in which everybody feels the right to say their opinion, doesn't feel ashamed, doesn't feel that they will be shut up in any way or laughed at. And that maybe comes to this trust that you're talking about, Schlomo, or some other feelings too, that you just have a right to participate in a dialogue about something, but also the right not to participate also. So that engagement in dialogue about various things is not forced to anybody. So somebody who just is not saying anything is okay for us. For many people who are in just dialogic pedagogy, the measure of dialogicity is that everyone has a right to say something, and everybody says something. And if a little group of people says something and the others not, then it's not a successful class. And we thought that that would be wrong because, people are interested in different things, as you say too, and they have a right to engage or not engage legitimately in our classes in in a dialogue about everything. So in that sense, democracy in our classes is not forced on anybody to say anything or to participate in anything. In fact, after 2017, actually at the time when this was published, we already switched to something what we called syllabus, not one syllabus, and syllabus in a sense, not just curriculum, but the whole regime. So now our students can choose in what way they want to study, not only what they want to study, which is the curriculum, but also in what way. Do they want to study completely with total freedom to create their own course? Do they want to study with some pre-structured and negotiable aspects of the syllabus, which we called opening syllabus? Because as you always experienced, and we did, it's a cultural shock for most of the students to be suddenly out of the very conventional institution, be taken and say, now you can do what you want. And and it's dizzying and experiencing that I'm not capable. As one student said, like, until last month, I had to ask whether I am allowed to go to pee. And now you're asking me to design my course. It's kind of like a very dizzying situation, even for the graduate students. But we also have other things, like we agreed that some people in our courses are placed there by administration. And if they were not placed by administration, they would never even take that course. But since they need the course and need a grade, we offered them also a conventional way. Do you want to study and just pass the tests? It's not your intrinsic learning, but for you, this is not intrinsic because this course does not interest you. So we don't have this idea that learning is equal in every situation or should be intrinsic in every situation for everyone all the time, but that there are unique people and unique situations. And that, let's say, I would love to do philosophy of education as an intrinsic course, but I would not like to do, let's say, how to technically repair, let's say, my remote control as anything intrinsically. Just tell me what to do, what steps to take, and if I know that, I don't have to understand why it works and how it works like that. So that I'm just using very different kind of ends of people can have in one course completely different attitude toward that course or toward many topics in that course, but maybe one or two or not. And so that we're trying to accommodate this multiplicity or pluralism of interests and pluralism of engagements and pluralism of motivations and pluralism of evaluations of everything in the ways that to provide as many possibilities for people to choose and as much guidance as everybody either needs or wants or things they have to fulfill for themselves or for whoever else. Plus, we also have an ability for all our students to say that they are prisoners of education, which is one of our modes of our course. And that means there are some athletes that have to pass this course because it's one of the courses that we teach is cultural differences in education. And so now it's very popular in the United States, and they place all kinds of students, undergraduates, to these cultural differences courses, and there are not many of them, so they fall into our department and to us. And they really could not care less. They really don't need it. They don't even need anything except that they pass that course. So we give them a passing grade or whatever grade they want and let them free in that sense, because this is one of the big problems that I wanted to talk with you all. We are so far all at least in the higher education in very conventional institutions where this kind of an approach to learning and education is antithetical to the institutional setting. And in many institutions would not be even allowed. It was not allowed in my old university where I taught until 2017, and I had to leave them. I left them because they were going to forbid me to do what I deeply was developing and believing in. And that's true for most other places. And so Regina mentioned, and I think somebody else, that, for instance, grades, it's a problem because grades are there, is that institutional rub that that is beyond our possibility to change unless the whole institution is changed. And that the real freedom, if it's real, you don't need any trust. People know they have freedom. And so that's, they can come and go and say, well, I like this or I like this person. And they don't have to trust anyone by creating some, like, is it gimmick or not? Because yes, students know that they are in a very authoritarian institution where there are certain rules that go above the teacher. And so question is whether such institutions beyond democratics, and not all democratic schools or so-called democratic schools, but there are democratic schools and most of them are in Israel, to say by the, let's say, percentage of the democratic schools by the number of people who live in that country is the biggest, I would say. So I had last year when I visited Israel in the Jerusalem Sudbury Valley school, I talked to one student who at that time was just before graduation, who came to school when he was 5th grade. And he said something like this: I came to school and for the first 6 months, I fell asleep. This is that period that students don't know what to do and how to do. And then I woke up and started to live. And I think that will be the title of my book when I write it, because this is where he found himself back again, which leads me to Abram's and our discussion about what's the self, what's the agency, and how we support whatever we believe that we support in that wandering or in that students finding for themselves what's next and what's important, and how to evaluate that based on what.
I just want to ask you, I think maybe Schlomo will join me and expand it. We believe that sometimes it's a question of habits. How do I learn to learn from the beginning? It's very convenient sometimes to stay with the familiar, not to try to do something else. And we believe that you have to at least try, or at least have to experience even 1 or 2 courses, at least in the college education colleges, or even in order to deal with these things. Even it's not because it does, as we also said before, it doesn't convenience for us. It's threats for us. We don't feel convenience. We don't have the habits to lead ourselves. And in one hand, you talk about the rights to decide what is convenience me, or what. On the other hand, I believe that you have to let yourself to experience this freedom in order to understand what do you miss, or what do you do, or what can you earn from this experience. And that's what happened with our students. And about democracies, sometimes in the democratic schools in Israel, for example, most of it, not the one you visit in Jerusalem, not Salisbury, but the other, students can choose what they wish to learn, and you have to make a group in order to bring a teacher for philosophy because you want to learn philosophy. But when the philosophy teacher come to teach you, he decide what you will learn about and how do you learn, okay, philosophy. You just, there is a difference between this democracy and the level of this democracy, the level of when you have by yourself to decide what and how to learn. About the questions of grades, for example, and assessments, or I can tell about myself. I think Shlomo also. I consider as a very radical in this, and nobody. Maybe if they want in the university, what I'm doing with the students, there was kick me out a lot of years before, but they still accept it as maybe as a very crazy lecture, very crazy course. But the students, they grade themselves. First of all, not just by, of course, not but just by numbers. They have to find, each of them have to find the criteria he wish to be assessed by. It's not something standard. Each one of them decide what and how to be, what they like, what they choose to prefer as a criteria to be assessed. How can I assess myself? How can I evaluate myself? And then by this criteria, they begin to think, sometimes with me, what does it mean? How can I manage with this? How can I deal with this challenge? And at the end, because I have to give the numbers, they also make numbers. Okay, or sometimes they have, okay, let me, you will decide between 85 or 90. So of course there are students who over assess themselves, but it's them. It's the way how they learn to assess themselves. I believe that it is also, they don't, nobody learn them to assess themselves. And it's also very, very important, also in democracy, to know how to assess yourself and not to wait for other all the time to assess you. So there is a place for dialogue. We have a lot of time. In the ideal world, I would like to make a dialogue between among my students, or between my students and me, in order to understand and to think about our self-assessment. But I think it's a very, very, very coherent, very, very important point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Assessment means different things if you are in education or self-directed or self-determined, and all of these are very intricate differences and important for us to talk. But if you're assessing, first of all, why are you assessing yourself or your work if you are just responsible to yourself and to nobody else? You have one way of like, how does that satisfy whatever your need is or interest is? Where did you get your answers to your questions, or you didn't? Did it make you feel you want to go further or not? So all of that, and you don't have to be numeric. But of course, as soon as that assessment is some kind of like a data for somebody else to compare you with somebody else, that's a completely different issue. And in your life depends on what you score for other people. It completely then really negates this internal self-assessment.
So sometimes I tell my students, okay, if you have a problem with your grades, for example, you can decide to give yourself the means of your grades for this year and decide that this will be 1 point more than your means of grades, something like this. We think together how to challenge this problem because it's not in the habit.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to relate to one of the remarks here of Abraham about linearity and intentionality. And I think it's important point to raise. When I decide that the course will be non-linear, I decide that that I have no intentions in something very specific that I can enumerate. I have a general intention that they will learn and so on, but it is not a specific intention that they will know X, Y, Z. And from the very beginning, I say to myself, it's none of your business. That's their business. They are the learners. I have to give them the right platform to do it. I have to encourage them when they have difficulties. I have to consult them. I have to lead them. As the very, very old notion of pedagogy is the old slave who takes the child to school in Greece, is the leading. So it's not intentional that he will know X and Y. And I think it's very important because one of the things that we as teachers are afraid of is to lose our intentionality in the sense of knowing exactly who is where, what, how he's knowing, and so on. It's a change of mind that I'm, in a sense, saying to myself, okay, I'm not going to be aware of it.
Shlomo, I appreciate the consideration, interpreting it in terms of like the teacher creating a course. The way I understood the tension though was more, let's say that there's these, I forgot what the middle two are, but there's these 4 principles of, how do you pronounce it? Is it Heutagogy or is it because it's
Heutagogy.
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 We'll just say
Heutagogy.
Heutagogy. All right. So in Heutagogy, in the start of the book, it says that these 4 principles. The first one being, what was it? The intention. The agent is able to state their intention. They get to choose what they're going to learn, why they're going to learn it, and all these other things, right? But they also are the other fact is that what they learn in the end is a discovery process. So I'm just wondering, it might be a pseudo problem, right? It's like, how is it these things are intentional that we require that the thing that they learn is actually not the thing that they intended to learn, because they can't have intended at the start what they end up discovering at the end. Do you see what I'm saying? So then this is a problem for me. It also potentially a pseudo problem in the sense of like, well, then it wasn't the self that chose the thing they learned.
No,
you see?
It's 2 different things. Sometimes you are in a place where you have strict curriculum from outside of the class. Say, demands of the state if you have exams, or of the college if you have exams, or some sort of decision of the teacher that they must know X, Y, and Z. So not everything they can decide, because they are in a certain system. So one of the very, very, let's say, honest thing to do is at the very first of the course to tell the student, look, this is a Heutagogy and so on, and we spoke about the principles, but there are some restrictions that I'm not allowed to I'm obliged to follow. Say that at the end of the course, I have to give you marks. Even if I don't want to, even if it's not strictly Heutagogy, but you have at the end some sort of exams or some sort of marks that I have to give you. This is not negotiable. Why? Because it's from outside the course. And it's like in life. In life itself, not everything you can decide for yourself. There are some obligations that you have to meet. But let us learn to live with these obligations, with these restrictions. Let us keep them, let us know that they are, and let us see how we can learn best given those restrictions. So under those terms, the course can be non-linear, so shouldn't be linear.
And
Right.
what if the students don't agree with you and they do want you to really use the strict way of the create all the norms yourself, and they have to show that they want that? What if they want that?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because then I tell you, you have a lot of courses in the college. This is not one of those that goes under the regular standard. And as a teacher of education, I have the privilege to tell them, this is a method of education, and you, as a decision of the college, have to know this method also. And you cannot know this method without practicing it. Later, you can decide whether to do it with the students or not. It's your students, when you will be teacher, but you have to know it. So it's again an external obligation. If there are some courses of the same time, I can tell you, go to another course. You don't have to be in this course, in this special course. But if it's an obligatory course, I tell them, okay, one of 30 courses you have in the college, this is one of them.
Can I ask
Okay.
a clarifying question about this? So I'm starting from the assumption that pedagogy can be done without anybody else. Like I could, once I understand the method of how I learn through setting my own goals, I could go off then and say, you know what, I'm going to learn how to build a car. And I've set that as my intention. And in the process of learning how to build a car from parts or something, I discover some other thing. I learned something else about engines that I didn't think I was going to learn, but that's what that's like the non-intentional things that I accidentally learned, right?
Right.
Just wondering.
But, I guess, and so, like I said before, it was a pseudo problem. I think I'm trying to think here about, like, for you, is pedagogy the stepping stone to my independent learning? Like after I've had the experience of being in a class where
it's leading to independent
doing
learning.
it on this topic, and these are the requirements, and then you're going to get assessed.
Yeah. It leads to independent learning.
So it's not
independent. But as far as it is in this educational system, it is guided. You are not alone. You always have somebody near you, beside you.
The self that's determining the learning then.
Right.
So, but anything, look at you, what you are doing at the last couple of days of your life. You're learning. Something you learn. You don't, it's something you want to learn. Something you have to learn because you have to cope with some problem and you have to learn it. But you're always learning. Learning is life. What Heutagogy main idea is that it put the, let's say, the responsibility on your shoulders. It's not the responsibility of the teacher that you will know something. Which is the right way, because we want you to be independent learner at the end.
So you're coerced into becoming an independent learner. That is what you subscribe to when you sign up for the course.
Yeah. Dragana, do you have a comment on that?
Well, thank you for this great discussion. I think the problem is that we always try to find the silver bullet for education. We know, or I think all of us know or noticed, that it doesn't work as it is now. And I'm thinking of public education, for example. So, and many are saying the problem is that now we are, compared to Socrates' times in ancient Greece, it's not a best tutor talking to the best student, but it is a teacher who may be insecure, who may be not trusting themselves, not to mention others, teaching everybody and trying to be good to everybody, and teaching somebody else's curriculum to all students. So it's a very difficult and different situation in which education is nowadays. And so I like all these ideas. I like Anna's ideas. I like your Schlomo and Amnon ideas. But I think we are talking about, and I need your help in my line of reasoning. Is it that we are talking about special schools? We are not talking about public education. We are not saying this is a silver bullet for everybody and every age and every culture. But we are talking about offering these special options, and then maybe allowing parents to sign up their children to this special option, or students themselves when they are if they are capable of doing so, of selecting themselves for these special options. So I just need your help in this kind of thinking of myself.
I think that that's a very big question, Dragana, that you're asking about whether this is a silver bullet or is it one of the options or something. And I think it's the question between the monism in the approach, like what approach to education prevails or has a legitimacy by the government or whatever, or are all of them legitimate, and should they all be there for different people, because different people need at different points of time in their lives different things and different approaches, and for different things. Like I really would like, when somebody teaches me how to drive, to teach me exactly what's the safest thing to do, and I'm not having to now just deliberate, maybe this is better, that better, or whatever in that area. But somebody else not. Maybe somebody wants to be the high-speed race driver and want to know really stunts and all kinds of things, and they want to experiment, and that's their passion and whatever. And so in every other thing. And so I think that we have been so far living in an era, very long era, of the monistic approach. Like we have the best practices, the best this, and so if it's good for one, it would be good for all. And yeah, I'm trying to bring it in this pluralism as a legitimacy. Like it's not true that one measure is good for all, and maybe it's not even good for you at different times or with different aspects of your life, and all of that could be legitimate completely. And if they but that also then raises a lot of each one of these little things that you start to turn changes everything around. Just the idea that there is pluralism, and that somebody can go to democratic school, but somebody else can opt to go to very conventional school, and that's very good for them.
we are, I just want to maybe to make it more clear, sharp, that we are not talking about method of learning. It's not a method of learning.
Approach, the whole approach.
It's a state of mind. It's approach. It's not, you can make Heutagogy in your own way. Me and Schlomo do it in very different ways. Okay, we have very different ideas, but both of us are leading by the approach, by the
general idea.
Spirit or general idea, spirit of Heutagogy. So I believe that also you didn't remind us, but today we are experience all the AI ideas and learning by AI and the MOOCs and the opened and also the Corona in the Corona time. We all of us experience, I think, the need, and it's general, the need of students to be self-determined learning, okay, to lead themselves, to know how to be more autonomic learner, and to know how to decide and how to search for and how to get decision and how to operate a critical thinking and how to be creative thinking. Also you know that today sometimes high-tech industry, they're looking for people with the title is not so important as your creativity, for example, and your skills to know how to learn fast and how to learn very effectively. So I believe we are living in a world that bring it or at least make it very relevant, the using of Heutagogy or the spirit of Heutagogy as a practice or approach or spirit that we have to practice. Now, there is a very tension among what we wish or what we think should be and the reality. And sometimes I talk with Schlomo, and we are amazing how sometimes the education ministry go and became more and more, even the institution, the academic institution, being more and more instrumentalic, being more and more schools for expertise and not an academic, and not an academia in the sense of creating ideas. And okay, so there is a tension, and we know that there is a struggle, but we believe we should fight for this direction, and not for the instrumentalic direction. Okay, the instrumentalic learning, as Matusov, as Eugene noted.
Right. No, we also think that the approach towards student is not a method. It's a way of living in the educational system. But I would like to raise a question.
But the experience of I believe that your students too, the experience of our students, it's that they have to learn to the examination, the exam. And what they don't learn to the examination, it's not relevant for them, for their life. It's very sad, and it's become to be more and more, it's increasing problem.
Very increasing problem. And also, as you say, the AI and the robotization and all of that brings all these fears in people's lives. Many of the known jobs will disappear because it will be possible for AI to take over and robotization, even in skilled jobs, you know, even in lawyers, doctors, and all kinds of things could use that. And so, on the other hand, the question is like, what and why would you learn anything if, you know, like only having a good robot can do better than you? In other words, should you even learn arithmetics if a calculator can do that better for you? You can just type in the numbers and it will tell you the.
Oh, here I wish to put attention to another point of Heutagogy. I believe, Shlomo may have an argument. I think we have a role. I mean, the education people have a role also to expose our students to the beautiful, or to the beautiful of the contents, and for the beautiful of the arithmetic, or to the beautiful of math, to the beautiful of English, or the beautiful of science. Not to give them, you know, a sign, or to test them, or to just to open their eyes to make them curiosity about this subject matter, not to teach them, just to expose them in order to evoke their interest or their curiosity to keep learning something about it. It doesn't matter how much they will learn about math, but they have to see that math, it's a way of observation about the world, like science, like arts, like everything. It's just a point of view. And I believe we have to expose, because we give them, we still have some roles in a means of exposing them to very different point of view about the world. So this is the fair between exposing and teaching. Okay, so we have then to encourage them to make dialogue about self-directed learning, but at the beginning, I believe we also have the role of exposing them.
I will now put on you, like I put sometimes on my students, a devil's advocate question. So this comes from a story, a science fiction story by Isaac Asimov, and Eugene developed it for his students, and I sometimes take it too. So here's the question. If there was like, let's call it a magic pill, or what in Matrix was downloading the knowledge, you know, like if you could kind of like take a pill and suddenly you know all the math, everything to the high, not just mechanically, you just know it, everything. Is that kind of exposure good enough for you? And I asked for my students, in what areas of your life you would take such magic pill, like maybe to learn another language, or to know how to repair a car, or where would you not? For what would you not take a magic pill?
Anna, tell me, what is the side effects of this pill?
No, side effects is just you get the knowledge in that area.
No, there is no something that you can't imagine that prevent you from doing other things.
No, this is just a thought experiment. So let's say that I would be really love to know about quantum mechanics, and I can take this magic pill for quantum mechanics, and after that I know all the intricacies, like if I studied for years and years.
Okay, why not?
Do all people agree with that?
No, try to convince us why not. convince us why not. But what is the price?
Well, there's an assumption built in that you would know everything that there is to know about quantum mechanics.
Okay.
Let's say you'll be exposed to every area that
Say you've
Okay.
achieved the highest possible level of that thing at present, it doesn't actually give you the ability to take it further. Right. So there's
So you will take another pill tomorrow and it will complete your education.
Yeah, is there a limit on pills?
no. No, the question is not you take it for what, but is there any area in your life for which you would not, or interest that you would not want to take a magic pill, but you would want to go the conventional way of learning about yourself?
The process again versus the outcomes. Question of
I
the
think
process.
the biggest problem we have nowadays is around morality. I don't think that developing or learning through curiosity or seeking creativity in people is enough, because we have a lot of creative people, but I'm not sure if directions that societies are taking nowadays, including technology, are good enough, and many people are getting scared with what is in front of us. So I think learning about morality, what is ethical, what is not, is something that is so important, but I would be afraid to take a pill on that, because the next question is, who decides what is ethical and what is not, and what is moral and what is not? So that's my take.
I like that.
There was a minister of education in Israel, Yossi Sarid, his name. I don't know if you're familiar with. And I heard him one time. He was a keynote. He gave a keynote in a conference about learning about education for values. Okay, for social values. And he began with the sentence that I don't believe in education. Okay, so everybody was amazing. Don't believe education, Minister of Education, I don't believe in education. Then he made a pause and he continued with, I believe in self-example. I mean, for morality, I believe you need to, the most important thing is to be a model, to give a self-example for behaving, for morality, for values. So it's not enough to know the values. It's how to
Live them.
how to example it in your daily life.
That's a very tough question, because on one hand, we would all like if people could be good and understand what good is. But the question is that there are values that are multiple values that clash with each other, not just belief systems, different religions and different moral values, but in everyday life, we very often have to choose between two values that are incompatible with each other, and we have to sacrifice one for the other. Like let's say it's a Berlin also. Isaiah Berlin talked about this pluralism and internal contradiction of values, where let's say if you are how you would decide between justice for somebody who committed a terrible crime and mercy. That's also a big value, that you have to give a second chance or not be so harsh in judging other people. And those are both very big values, and many examples like that in life. So yeah, the question is, and we who come from socialist countries, Dragana would know, Dina would know, I would know, who were raised in a system that was not a democratic system 100%, but had this, especially in the Soviet Union, in this glory of certain kind of value and system, went to such a brainwashing of many people, or if you want to say ISIS is brainwashing their children. We all can find somebody who we disagree with very vehemently, and they disagree with us. And so then where education falls. And in that sense, you mentioned something in your critique of our article in your book about Berlin and what two kinds of freedom, which is connected to this teaching for values. And I just want to talk a little bit about that, because that is one of the things that inspires me very much. Isaiah Berlin defined two kinds of liberty. One he called negative liberty, and the other positive liberty. And there is a lot of always misunderstanding what he thought about this, that misunderstanding or different understanding. So this is how I understand it. Negative liberty, and he called it a sphere of freedom in which nobody else can tell you what to do, or it doesn't have legitimate right, is liberty that's not defined. That's why it's negative. It's not for anything. It's liberty to do whatever you want without any limitations in that sphere. But of course, it's limited by the prohibitions. Like you cannot, it's like in a 10 commandments: do not kill, do not this. This is the boundary of your internal liberty. As soon as we start to define liberty as positive value, it's a positively defined, and that is not anymore a liberty that you have can do whatever you want unless it's forbidden. It's a freedom to do whatever is prescribed to you, except that things that are not prescribed for you are immediate. So it's kind of mathematical definition. Positive means it's defined inside. Negative means it's not defined inside. And most of if you want to go back to pedagogy, andragogy, and even I'm now trying to figure out whether heutagogy is more defined by positive freedoms, like what is this freedom for? And what I'm trying to do, and Eugene, to create freedoms that are just limited by the limitations, what's outside the rules that you cannot do. Inside, you can do whatever you define, however you define. Whatever education is for you, you can define it. I'm not the one to tell you what's education for you. So where education falls, whether it falls in this sphere, in the bubble of personal definition, which is negative in the sense of, sorry, my my hand goes up because I'm, it's AI knows that I raised my hand. It's the Zoom new feature that you can raise your hand and Zoom puts the orange hand there. Anyway, to what extent heutagogy is defining the freedoms as positive freedoms, like freedoms for something, like freedoms for good moral values, or freedoms for human justice, and freedoms for good world, or whatever. And whether that definition in itself is a kind of a prescribed prescribed field outside of which you cannot step, because if you step out, then you are not considered to be member of that community of learners or that community of people, because you are outside of the goodness or outside of the good or true. So this is how I understand it. And in that sense, we went, and Eugene wrote about it in some other article, the difference between education and learning. While we learn all the times and all kinds of things and cannot stop ourselves learning, what is education? Who defines that? And how is it defined? Is education defined as a kind of positive freedom that comes from Kant, from Habermas, from many, many, many people? Or is education part of the learner's definition? Like what I can learn many things, but not think of it as my education. So I define what's education for myself and each learner, not only what's learning for myself, but education. So education in a sense of what's valuable learning, and what's useful and valuable learning is education, not any learning.
I wonder why you don't ask us about the difference between autodidactic person and Heutagogy.
Yeah, please talk about it. I did not formulate it in that sense, but if you want to talk about it, please do. Yeah.
Schlomo,
מה אתה רוצה ממני?
the difference between autodidactic and Heutagogy.
No, זה לא... I think that the question that was raised before the didactic is highly important in this area. Question between freedom, between positive and negative freedom. And the problem is that when you impose some sort of positive freedom, you already dictate something in and out, which means that not everything is open, not everybody can learn anything or behave.
Or allowed. I mean, it's just not legitimate. It doesn't count.
Doesn't have. So, in a sense, morality as a whole is positive freedom, because it tells you what is right and what is wrong to do. Sometimes it says, okay, it's up to you, but know how to decide. So I'll give you the ladder, I'll give you the criteria, I'll give you the way of thinking, how to decide what is right or wrong. But morality in itself, and it doesn't matter whose moral it is, because they're very similar to each other at the very end. Everybody say, don't kill you, and so on. So you take morality as the basis of education, you don't get to Heutagogy at the end. Because not everybody can get its own conclusion and be happy with it.
Right.
Because he has to see how his conclusion relates to others' conclusion. And how to find the common ideas or the common behavior that one will not hurt the other and so on. And of course, the basic notion here is restraint, how to restrain yourself. That's the main idea of the whole morality. Know how to restrain yourself.
Or, you know, for some people, it's honor. Like you have to preserve your honor. That's
it's also restraining.
That's
do in a way that restrain. You have to restrain yourself in order to get honor, to be honored. You can do everything you want. You can't.
We have problems, for instance, with the immigration from many Muslim countries into the Norway or Sweden or Germany, that children have completely different understanding of what's fair and whether you can fight or not fight. And some parents that come from the Middle East say, if somebody hits you, you hit back. And the teachers do not want that. The teacher says, that's not our value. You have to discuss, you have to see who is what, you know. And the parents support the children who say, my child is going to hit back. That's it.
Okay, but it's again a question of tradition, what you say.
Well, but the morality too, what's important.
But who decides what is morality? The tradition.
So when we put that in education, is that the job of education, or it's something that you have to leave open?
No, it depends on your values as a teacher. If you respect multiculturalism and say everything goes, or you say I have my own way of life, and I want to impose it on you.
Right.
And I say impose in a positive way, because we want a society that we can live together.
Mhm.
And if I don't respect your values, we couldn't, how can we live together?
So yes, I think that you have to be put education to be defined by the student, and that means in their negative freedom. That means you cannot define for them what's good education.
I can only tell them you're living in a society which has certain values. Obeying them have prices and have disobeying them also have prices, and now you have all the background that you can decide upon.
Right. Right.
But know that if you are a Muslim in Norway and behave like you behaved before in certain countries, you'll have to pay the price here.
Well, that's an age-long discussion, and wars have been waged because of these things. Like even Romans stopped valuing the Greeks when they realized that the Greeks, let's say, keep their women like in the background and that they cannot come out and be free. The Greeks got very offended when the Romans asked them, "Where are your wives?" because they misinterpreted those questions as somehow wanting Romans wanting to do something with their wives. So yeah, so the whole point of Berlin is that the values are incompatible and we have to live in that world, but it doesn't mean we don't do anything about them. But the question is, who has a right to impose not only their value, but even discussion about these values for us as educators, like for what is education? And those are kind of these little finesses for me, at least, that are very interesting in your Heutagogy approach. And I don't know how I would even call our democratic dialogic education for agency, for and from agency, as we call it. Yeah.
We need a dialogue. We need a dialogue in order to get into.
That's a never-ending dialogue.
Some agreements.
Some disagreements, some agreements. Yes.
The point is that even Heutagogy has a certain values.
Mm-hmm,
the value that you respect the student wishes and autonomy is, let's say, is not acceptable in any tradition.
That's right. It's not acceptable for my college. They told me, you're the expert. Tell your students what to do. What are you? How can they say what they want to do?
Yes, this is another level of analysis, isn't it? When we think about the values that are going through when you accept these principles of the approaches, the logical approach and the Heutagogy, and then all the democratic principles that we use when we are teaching this kind of experiences. Then I had this this kind of first democratic experience with my students last semester, and at some time I felt like what's going on here is I'm transmitting, I'm making available some very clearly some values here because of the way they responded to me. You could perceive the values coming back, the same principles that you are using when you are in that experience with them, trying to do this other kind of teaching or being with them or learning.
Do you feel you need control?
I don't think I need control, but they want a lot. They wanted a lot of my control. They asked me, please, let's go back to the traditional way of doing it.
Is it real? Is it real need?
Is it?
Is it real need?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think so.
I mean, this is one of the, am I muted? No. This is one of the reasons I find the account of the self important, right? I find that we're going to keep coming back to the self. Like, I'm not a Freudian, but there is like some aspects of the Freudian in terms of the relationships, like there's accounted for in the conception of the self and the account of the unconscious drives. And I think that like even a student who wants, who comes to a class, on some level they recognize your authority because you have some power over them. And then they perform to that, right? So they end up spitting back your ideology, your values, whatever. Because there is some other psychological good, which is the recognition and approval of someone who has authority figure, or maybe a paternal, maternal kind of figure, right? There's this philosopher of education, David Backer, who wrote a kind of criticism of the Harkness model of seminars. So the Harkness model is just basically everybody sits at a round table so that everyone can see each other. And then you come with a liberal arts text and you've read Plato's Republic, and then you're like, all right, the discussion starts now. Just as, in a sense, what we're doing here is, in some sense, a Harkness kind of model. Like, we're all free to speak. But his criticism was precisely that if you track the interactions, interpersonal interactions, more often than not, well, in his accounting, basically all of the interactions, even if I'm talking right now to Amnon, right, I'm actually also potentially, like, I respect Anna's perception of me. So I'm also trying to give a speech that somehow shapes her reception of how I'm interpreted. And similarly, like, say, Eugene, who's someone I respect and who's been here before, when he's here, it changes the way that I speak, right? And so this kind of sense is like, well, what is the self? And then this is like, I'm not the same person when other particular people are there, right? And so I am, in a sense, like a response, a web of the other relationships that I am in negotiation with, right? And so, yeah, this for me is what I find most problematic about, like, a kind of what I think of as like a reified model of the self. Like, you mentioned Foucault in the book, like, in terms of like this entrepreneurial subject. And that is really what I worry, that why I think now is becoming a time for self-directed learning, because I think that the time has come for, like, with AI, we are going to see the disappearance of teachers in a big way. And I think more and more, like, all right, so I have friends in the music industry and the arts and whatnot, and they're all lamenting, the disappearance of all of their work and jobs. And I have to say, I look around more and more now, and I think teachers and the whole form of life that you have around the academy, like you two of you are retired, right? I don't know that form of life actually continues at all. Just like you can't become a rock and roll star or whatever, like, it was from a period of time historically, and we aren't going back to that. So, I don't know. I just pray about it.
Interesting, Abram. I think you're very, very profound question about what is then the role of education, or what will be the role of education and academia in human life. And Eugene wrote a whole book about the post-work society, and with his idea that starts from the Greek word schole, that means really leisure time, that education has to be not a utilitarian enterprise where people are working to achieve something, but a leisurely time, which is a quality leisure. There are all kinds of leisures, but go back to this Greek ideal where the quality of life is more important than utility of whether you can earn money or you can produce machines or this and that. Of course, both of them will to certain, but the most part of the time we will have time, hopefully, and not kill each other, to decide what to do with all this time in our lives. Like,
but then you will take your pill.
Right. Well, maybe for some people you will take your pill, but some people even all their lives a member of a choir, or they go to, I used to go to poetry sessions and be a part of the poetry club, or you want to engage with people who are knitting or whatever else they're doing. And so it's not about learning and becoming learned, but about having a very fulfilled cultural life, with producing culture and science and consuming culture and science wherever and however, but not utilitarian like today's all schooling is based on kind of like forming people to serve something, and that's the instrumentalism. Instrumentalism can still be useful. Where is its place? You know, for certain things, you know, you need people who can be formed in a certain way, but that should be really then a personal decision, because most of the things could be done by, you know, the robots. And not only that, the bigger question is, for me, philosophically, if the machines can be so sophisticated that we even can have an illusion that they have a self, for instance, and are your dialogic partner, but they can, of course, even program, they can do all this intellectual work. What does it mean that we are kind of teaching students except to be smart machines? And then the question is, what's beyond that? What's beyond just the pattern recognition and being smart in that kind of logical sense? And it is probably morality and probably aesthetics, all these things that are transcendental, that cannot be kind of like pinpointed as something given. And then education has to come on that level. Everything else we need to learn, or we can have pills, or the machines can do for us.
Whereas our emotions of soul.
Right. All right. We have to all leave. Thank you, Regina. Thank you for everyone for this wonderful discussion. And thank you for writing this book that's very thought-provoking and putting us in this wonderful session. Thank you, Silviane.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave. We're all leaving. Okay.
Yeah, we're all leaving.